Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fascinating, I think. That 2008 Democratic primary, Clinton versus Obama.
Oh, yeah, a huge moment. You had Hillary Clinton, the first really viable female candidate, and Barack Obama, who, well, we know how that turned out, history-making.
Absolutely. And the energy?
Yeah.
Incredible. Voter turnout was through the roof.
It really was. And, behind all that excitement, there was this massive financial battle going on.
Yeah.
The whole 2008 cycle, it was something like, over $1.6 billion raised?
$1.6 billion. Wow.
Yeah, across all parties. That was like 150% more than just 4 years earlier in 2004. Huge jump.
So money was clearly a massive factor.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even early on, people were saying you needed probably $100 million banked by the end of 2007 just to be taken seriously.
Which brings us right to what we're doing today. We want to really unpack the campaign finances for Clinton and Obama in that primary fight. Our mission, if you like, is to look at how much they raised, where did that money actually come from, how did they spend it?
And what did it all mean? What was the link between the money and who actually won?
Exactly. So for everyone listening, this is kind of your inside look at the financial machinery behind that historic race and maybe what it tells us about campaigns even now.
Okay, so where do we start? Fundraising, right? The expectations.
Yeah, let's start there. Hillary Clinton, she was the front runner, the big name.
Right. And she started strong. First quarter of 2007, she pulls in $26 million. Plus, she transferred another, I think, $10 million from her Senate campaign funds.
So a hefty war chest right out of the gate. A record, actually.
Definitely gave her early firepower. And she kept up a pretty strong pace through most of 2007. By the end of the year, both she and Obama had raised roughly the same amount, around $100 million each.
Okay, so neck and neck financially going into the actual primary year, 2008.
Pretty much. But then things changed dramatically.
This is where the Obama fundraising machine really kicked into gear, wasn't it?
It absolutely caught fire. You had this incredible grassroots energy, and they figured out how to harness it online in a way nobody really had before.
So what did that look like in, say, January 2008, the first real test?
Okay. January, Clinton raises a solid $13.5 million. Still a lot of money.
Yeah, respectable.
But Obama, he brings in $32 million. More than double.
Wow. That's a statement.
And here's a really telling detail. That same month, January, Clinton had to loan her own campaign $5 million.
Wait, her own money, the front runner.
Her own money, yeah. That single act, I think, really signaled the kind of financial pressure she was suddenly under. It definitely became part of the narrative.
I can imagine. That sends a tough signal. And did Obama keep that momentum going?
Oh, did he ever? February 2008 was just massive for him. $56.8 million total. About $55.5 million of that was just for the primary fight. Record-breaking stuff.
That's a phenomenal number.
And he kept it up. June, another $52 million. So by the time the primaries were basically over, say, end of May 2008, Clinton had raised around $229.4 million for the primary contest.
Okay. And Obama?
Obama was already over $295 million just for the primary. And if you look at the whole cycle, Clinton's total was about $246 million. But Obama, his total receipts hit almost $780 million.
Good grief. That's a huge disparity by the end.
A massive difference.
And it feels like that financial shift, it wasn't just happening in a vacuum, right? It sort of tracked with what was happening in the race itself.
Exactly. You saw Obama starting to win key primaries, getting more positive media, and the money followed. Or maybe the money helped drive the wins. It's sort of a cycle.
A self-reinforcing loop. Wins bring money, money fuels more campaigning, potentially leads to more wins.
Precisely. And on the flip side, maybe the news about Clinton's financial strain, the loan, perhaps that dampened enthusiasm among some donors. Hard to say for sure, but it's plausible.
Okay, so the amount of money shifted dramatically. Let's get into the types of donors, because that seems like a really core difference between them.
It really was. You're looking at two fundamentally different models, almost. Clinton was relying much more on sort of the traditional Democratic playbook, established networks, larger individual donations.
The high-dollar fundraisers, the usual suspects, maybe.
To a large extent, yes, whereas Obama put a huge emphasis on grassroots support. Small donations collected mostly online. It was revolutionary at the time.
Okay, break down Clinton's funding model for us then, the traditional approach.
Sure. So looking at her cycle total, about $143.6 million came from large individual donations. That's donations over $200. That works out to roughly 65% of her total funds.
65% from larger donors.
Yeah. And early on, It was even more skewed that way. Something like 70% of her early money came from people giving the maximum allowed, which was $2,300 then.
Maxed out donors.
Right. Even deep into the primaries, like by April '08, still over half her money, 51%, was from people giving $1,000 or more.
Okay, so heavily reliant on those bigger checks. What about small donors for her? Under $200.
She did get small donations, about $51.7 million total, which was around 23% of her cycle funds.
Still a lot of money, but percentage-wise?
Percentage-wise, much smaller than Obama, yeah. We did see her small donor numbers tick up a bit in March and April '08.
Yeah.
Maybe a late push to broaden the base.
Interesting. And PACs, political action committees?
Almost nothing, really minimal, like $1.4 million total, less than 1%.
Can we mention the personal loans already? That was significant.
Very. $13.2 million she loaned the campaign herself, including that $5 million in January. And, that contributed to her ending the primary with considerable debt, but $22.5 million in the red for the primary.
Ouch. And industry support, where did the big checks tend to come from?
Well, lobbyists were a source, about $1.5 million. The finance sector was significant. Hedge funds, private equity, that kind of thing, maybe $1.8 million. And the entertainment industry, about $3.5 million there.
Okay, so established networks, large donors, some key industry backing, but also personal loans and debt. That's the Clinton picture.
Pretty much, yeah.
Now, let's contrast that with Obama. You said it was a whole different ballgame.
It really was. The defining feature for Obama was the sheer volume of small individual contributions, under $200 donations, mostly online.
This was the internet fundraising phenomenon.
Exactly. Through April 2008, almost half, 47% of his money came from those small donors.
47%. That's huge compared to Clinton's 23%.
Massive difference. And in his really big fundraising months, it was even higher, like 60% in March, 65% in April and June for the primary funds. Just incredible grassroots mobilization.
But it wasn't only small donors, right? He must have had large donors, too.
Oh, absolutely. Can't run a campaign like that without them. By that same point, April '08, about 34% of his funds came from donors giving $1,000 or more. So still substantial support from bigger checks, bundlers, the whole system.
So a more balanced mix, maybe, but heavily weighted towards the small contributions compared to Clinton.
Definitely more balanced, with that unprecedented small donor base driving a lot of it. Like Clinton, very little PAC money. And interestingly, less money from lobbyists than the Clinton, got about $734,000 versus her $1.5 million.
And crucially, no personal loans from him.
None. And he also didn't take public matching funds in the primary. Later, famously, he opted out of public financing for the general election, too, which was a big strategic move enabled by this fundraising machine.
Right. What about his industry support? Where did his money come from?
It was quite diverse. He dominated in the education sector, something like $25 million. He actually outraised Clinton in entertainment, nearly $10 million there.
Wow.
And also outraised her in finance, surprisingly to some, maybe $3.7 million. Even telephone utilities. Plus, significant backing from tech firms like Google and Blue State Digital, which was key to his whole online operation.
So just comparing them side by side, Clinton's establishment, large donor focus, versus Obama's grassroots, small donor, online energy.
That's the core contrast, yeah.
And it feels like that small donor success for Obama, it wasn't just about the cash, was it? It signaled something more.
Absolutely. It was a powerful symbol of grassroots enthusiasm, engagement, organizational depth. Getting millions of people to give even $5 or $10, that shows a different kind of buy-in.
People felt invested, literally.
Exactly. Many were likely volunteers, too. And think about financial resilience. Clinton relied on donors who might hit their contribution limits. Obama had this huge replenishable pool of small donors he could go back to that's much more sustainable for a long, drawn-out primary fight.
Which is exactly what the 2008 primary became. So that sustainability was key.
It really was. Her model started showing strain. His proved scalable.
Okay, so different fundraising models, different donor bases. How did that translate into spending? How did they use the money they raised? We know Obama ended up raising and spending more overall.
Yeah, he definitely outspent her, especially as the primary wore on. If you look at the early months of 2008, January, Obama spent a bit more, maybe $30.5 million to her $28.5 million. Pretty close. But then February, Obama spends $42.3 million, Clinton $31.8 million. The gap widens. March, Obama $30.6 million, Clinton $22.4 million. So you see the trend. He's consistently able to spend more.
And the overall cycle spending figures reflected that too.
Massively. Obama's total spending for the cycle was around $760 million. Clinton's was about $233 million.
Yeah.
So yeah, he spent considerably more during the primary phase as well.
$760 million. That's a staggering amount of money to spend. Where did it all go?
A huge chunk went to media. Over half, actually. 57%, something like $422 million.
Wow. What kind of media?
A lot was just listed as, general media buys, likely TV and radio. But also significant spending specifically on web advertising, about $21 million, and print ads, another $20 million or so. His main media firm, GMB, got a huge piece of that, over $350 million.
So blanketing the airwaves and the internet?
Pretty much. Then you have the usual operational costs. Administrative stuff, travel, offices, that was about 11%. Fundraising costs, about 8%. Salaries and benefits for staff, around 7%.
Standard campaign costs.
Right. But also, reflecting his strategy, significant payments to tech companies. We mentioned Google, about $9.4 million. Blue State Digital, $3.5 million. Investing in that digital infrastructure.
Fueling the online machine.
Exactly. And then resources for field operations, getting out the vote, supporting local parties. That's baked into admin, salary, event costs, plus direct transfers to state and local Democratic parties, which were quite large, around $33 million.
So it sounds like having more money just gave Obama way more options, more flexibility.
Absolutely. That consistent, strong fundraising meant he could just do more. He could invest heavily in multiple states at the same time, expensive states with big media markets, but also caucus states that need lots of organizers on the ground.
He could afford both.
He could fight everywhere.
Right. He had the resources to run a truly national campaign for the entire duration. And those digital investments, they likely made his spending more efficient, too. Mobilizing volunteers and donors online probably costs less per person than traditional methods.
And Clinton, facing those financial pressures and the debt, well, it likely constrained her choices. Maybe she couldn't contest certain states as heavily or had to pull back on media spending at crucial moments. The debt itself becomes a drag. It potentially meant that every dollar spent wasn't having the same impact, couldn't really change the race's direction decisively by that point.
Okay, so we've looked at the fundraising trajectories, the donor bases, the spending strategies. Let's try to synthesize this. What's the big picture takeaway about the role money played here?
Well, the basic facts are clear, right? Obama raised more, spent more. He had that incredible small donor base. He didn't go into debt. He used the internet really effectively.
While Clinton started strong but hit financial challenges, relied more on traditional big donors, took on debt.
Exactly. But I think the really crucial insight is that it wasn't just about the total dollars. It was how the money was raised and how it was spent.
The process mattered as much as the outcome.
I think so. That Obama's small donor success, it wasn't just cash in the bank. It was proof of energy, enthusiasm, organization. It was a signal.
A signal that resonated.
Yeah. And his financial advantage let him compete everywhere. Even down to spending on wooing individual delegates and superdelegates. That long primary really tested whose fundraising model could last the distance, and he's just built for it.
And you mentioned the narrative earlier, Clinton's loans becoming a story.
Right, that matters too. Campaign finance isn't just operational fuel, it affects the campaign's image, the story being told in the media. How your money story aligns or doesn't align with your overall message.
So the old saying, money wins elections, maybe it's more complicated.
It's definitely more complicated. Money is essential, obviously. You can't compete without it. But where it comes from, that grassroots signal versus establishment backing and how strategically you spend it, that can be more decisive than just having the biggest pile of cash at the start.
So finance is both fuel and buying, like a thermometer, gauging the campaign's health and momentum.
That's a great way to put it. Fuel and a thermometer. And Obama's campaign was running hot on both counts. His fundraising surges didn't just fill the coffers, they signaled momentum, which attracted more support, more media, more everything. Clinton's model, while strong initially, didn't provide that same kind of public temperature reading, and eventually it showed signs of running low on fuel.
And the narrative connection again. Obama's small donors fit perfectly with his change you can believe in message.
Absolutely. It was change from the bottom up reflected in the fundraising. Clinton's reliance on bigger checks and then the personal loans. Well, opponents could frame that differently, couldn't they? As more traditional, maybe even vulnerable.
So looking back, 2008 really feels like a watershed moment for campaign finance, doesn't it?
Undeniably, it was this dramatic clash of old and new models. And the new model, that online small donor mobilization that Obama pioneered on that scale, it proved incredibly powerful.
And the takeaway isn't just raise more money.
No, definitely not. It's about the nature of the money. what it represents in terms of grassroots energy. It's about aligning your financial strategy with your campaign message, your organization. Obama's model embodied his call for change.
And the legacy is still with us. Online fundraising, grassroots mobilization, they're totally central now.
Absolutely. And Obama's decision to skip public financing in the general election, that also set a precedent, signaling a potential shift away from that system, for better or worse.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Seeing how things have evolved even since then, you still have big money, you still have grassroots energy, often online. What do these dynamics mean for the future? Who can realistically even run for these high offices anymore?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe the billion-dollar question now. Something definitely worth keeping an eye on.
Indeed. Well, this has been fascinating. Thanks for breaking it all down.